Hello, and welcome to a special episode of Bull Tales. I'm Claire White, and I'm stepping in as your host today for a very good reason. Over the first two episodes, we heard from Andrew Quirk from Lendillo Pole Herefords and Tim Reed from JTR Cattle Co. about their bulls heading to Dubbo National held on the 1st of July. But what you might not know is our usual host, Lee, is also consigning 3 bulls to Dubbo under the Lendillo prefix. Now, Lee is far too modest to blow his own trumpet, so I thought it was about time we turned the tables around and put him in the hot seat. For after all, we're going to hear about everyone else's bulls, so we should get to know about the ones from the guy asking all the questions. Lee, welcome to your own show, but this time as a guest.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Thanks for doing this for me.
No worries. Thanks for making it sound like it was optional. So before we dive into your Dubbo bulls, let's let our listeners find out a little bit more about you.
Yeah, Claire, thanks for asking. Well, I've been involved with stud cattle since I was 5 years old, having the opportunity to help my uncle with his Pole Hereford stud down in Yass. I was actively competing at heifer shows since I was 13 years old. I started a Poley stud when I was 14, son to Lee, and had that right up until 2012 when I come here to Llandillo. I was lucky enough to work for Graham Williams through the late 90s when he was at Lendillo Pole Herefords and learned a great perspective of cattle breeding and genetics from him. After completing a plumbing apprenticeship in 2000, I moved to Stapleton Pole Herefords in Scone. It's situated on 4,000 hectares with a feedlot of 500 steers that we turned off 16 steers a week into the IJ stalls in through Newcastle. I was in charge of the stud operation up there, but I had the opportunity to work with probably one of the true cattlemen I've ever met to date in Colin Thompson. We were only there for 2 years, but looking back, that's probably the 2 most important years of my life. From there, went and managed Moorfields Red Angus and then worked for David Hobbs at BST, Tulla Red Angus, before we moved back to Sydney, where I worked at Sydney Uni, working in the veterinary department, working on a few projects and in the dairy there. And I was there right up until we moved to Llandillo in 2012. From 2012, I've been here at Llandillo. I took over as the manager in 2016. And since then, we've started a little Red Angus stud for our son, Max.
Very good. So a lot of cattle, a lot of stuff, but it sounds very much like your first stud was a Hereford stud and you're currently at a Hereford stud now. So what was it specifically that drew you to the Hereford breed?
Yeah, my first true love was Herefords for sure. As a kid, it was just definitely the opportunities that were available with the Hereford breed at the time and that family feel when we went to the shows. As I've got older and working with them full time, my love of Hereford has grown, probably for the durability and longevity of Hereford cattle and definitely the temperament.
Yeah, very good. So now just touching on the Llandillo operation just a little bit, can you tell us a little bit about what your setup like and what's your breeding philosophy there at Llandillo?
Yeah, so Llandillo's, we're sort of growing back up to about 300 stud cows at the moment with a goal to get back to about 370 stud calves between autumn and spring joining. We do 2 6-week joinings now. When I took over the management of Llandillo, we had a great base herd of cows that were big framed, long necked, real wedge shaped with a heap of milk and pretty good footed cows. So what I've been working on since then is really to add that carcass, tidy up the teat size and udder shape in the herd without compromising the really strong traits that Llandillo was already known for. The one thing I really found is it's hard to get that thickness, that real thickness into your cattle without losing that neck and that wedge shape. And we're pretty staunch. We don't compromise on foot structure or depth of heel. We won't breed for numbers just to have numbers, just due to the inconsistency of the breeding and low accuracies of the breed plan figures in the breed. But I prefer to see cattle that'll give me a line of 7s instead of a couple of 9s and a heaps of 2s or 3s. When you're grading cattle, it's great to breed a world beater, but if his brothers and sisters are all culls, it's not going to do much for you in the long term. And we've really worked on trying to find bulls that are going to breed us a pen of consistent calves somewhere in the middle. One of the biggest things we do here is we join every heifer to calve down at 2 or just under 2. We rejoin to make sure they've calved by 3. I think this is really the best natural culling way. We only join for 6 weeks. Once they've had that second calf, they need to wean that calf at above 60% of their body weight. And then once that, if they've made it through those 3 things, it comes down to the 3 T's to stay on the farm: tits, teeth, and toes. Then they can stay.
How are my toes?
Your toes
Good?
are good.
Oh, good. Ticking all the
Yeah.
boxes then. Very good. So it sounds like consistency is very much the key.
Yeah, and that's, we've been working really hard just to get that consistency so that we've got a product that's not going to let people down.
Yeah, excellent. All right, so heading on or touching on this podcast, you've been pretty strategic about setting this up just before Dubbo. Was this a coincidence, or did you see an opportunity just to promote, or is it industry specific?
Yeah, look, I've always wanted to do the podcast, and I'm sure you know as well as anyone, I've talked about it for quite a few years now, and I couldn't really work out how to do it. And it was probably just going to be a bit of a pipe dream that I'd talk about. But when we donated a heifer a couple of months ago, and we decided to do the Facebook live streams for the last man standing draw every Monday night, it was just really received so well, and so many people said how good it was. I thought, with that gaining a bit of traction and followers, if I was ever going to have a go at a podcast, now's the time to do it. And the fact that Dubbo was so close, what it actually did was it just gave me an opportunity to create some content about something that I was going to be confident of speaking about, and had some contacts to get started in Andrew and Tim. And I've got a heap of ideas for where I want to take this podcast, but we'll start with this and see how we go.
Yeah, sounds like a good jumping off point, especially if it's content that you know and love. So you've got to start somewhere, right? Alrighty, well, let's get down to business and talk about these bulls that you have for Dubbo. So you've got 3 on offer. I've seen them in the catalogue and been down the shed once or twice. They're looking pretty impressive. You seem to be relatively happy with them. Let's talk about these bulls. Let's talk about them in their lot number order, if that's okay.
Yep. Righto. So the first bull is Lendillo Untouchable U150, which is lot 8 in the catalogue.
Lot 8 in the catalogue. Can you tell me a bit about his sire and dam?
Yeah, he's a Tycler Tedesco out of the Llandillo Tilly cow line.
Yeah, okay. So what made you choose Tedesco?
We brought Tedesco a couple of years ago. This is actually the oldest of the Tedesco calves and the first to be offered by us. We basically brought Tedesco to cross with our Columbus and Pacemaker daughters. We were trying to put him over as many as we could. One of the big things we try to do here is try to breed a bull blanket joining over a couple of certain sires to start off with. And we kind of brought him to add to the Columbus and Pacemaker cows, which are very similar and breeding well together. And just try to incorporate those traits that we're focusing on and cleaning up our weaknesses in the Pacemaker and Columbus cows. They're the lines that he's really added carcass to our program, and that's the cattle that we brought Tedesco for, really.
Yeah, okay. And what about the dam side?
Yeah, so the Tilly N114 cows obviously from the Tilly cow family, that's been at Llandillo since the late 1980s, well before my time. They're very broody cows, big white hip cows with probably some of the most milk that we've got in the herd. As I said, N114 is a Columbus daughter. She goes back to the great Star SS Thunder on the dam side. Yeah, N114, she had a bull sell actually 2 years ago at Dubbo to Luke Smith from Barilla. And from all reports, he's going well. And yeah, we're pretty happy with the Tilly cow line.
Yeah, very good. So with Untouchable U150, tell me a little bit about his physical attributes.
Yeah, look, U150 is a good, honest commercial bull. He's got a great depth of heel, good angulation through his leg set, a really good set of testicles, very clean sheath. He's got that great head and really good eye set to him.
Where do you see him fitting into someone's herd?
Yeah, look, I hope 150 goes to a home where they're wanting to retain females and are looking to sell fast-growing, shapy weaners. I think he's going to really add to that female program with that strong cow line. And yeah, the calves are going to get up and grow really well.
Now, onto your second bull you've got up for sale. He's what can you tell us about him?
Yeah, look, the second bull in the strings, Lendillo Bam, U139, and he sells as lot 10.
Lot 10, okay. What about his pedigree?
Yeah, so he's also a Tedesco. You know, as I said before, we brought Tedesco for a reason, and really that reason was to add that extra length to some of those carcass trait cows. We really wanted a Queenscliff in our pedigree, which he is. And we've been...
Why did you want a Queenscliff?
Just the consistency of his breeding. We've been watching what he'd done at Tykler, and they got some semen overseas and in New Zealand, and he bred really well there. And purely the consistency of him and the length. We really need to just add that length through the rib of those cattle. So Tedesco gave us an opportunity to do that from what Ben says is his favourite cow line in the Climax cow line. And we know that they've got a really good udder and really tidy teats on the Climax cow. So that really helped us out.
Yeah, okay. And what about the dam
Yeah,
side
so
of
the
him?
dam of him, it's probably our favourite cow for most people that come on tour at Lendillo here in LAN NO75. She's an Asta. She's a by Columbus, and as I said before, we joined all the Columbus daughters. So, so Tilly and Asta both joined the Tedesco. She's from the Asta cow line. I'd say it's probably our most successful family lately. We sold a Asta heifer to Andrew Quirk at Dubbo in 2022, who topped the sale and then went on to win Grand Champion Female at Sydney in 2024 for Pinnacle. In 75 herself, she's actually the mother of Lendillo Ready, who won Supreme Exhibit at Sydney in 2022. We were going to sell him at Dubbo, and we ended up withdrawing him from the sale and keeping him. We had one of our older bulls break down, and we decided to pull him out and keep him, and we've got daughters on the ground now, and they're going to be a real feature in the years to come.
Very good. So you said that Asta's a bit of a fan favourite with people that come on farm tours here. Why is she so good?
I don't know if it's the big flashy white leg, a bit of extra white up through the front, or whether it's that soft eye, but she just seems to get everyone's attention. It doesn't matter if there's 5 in the paddock or 50 in the paddock. Wherever she is, and we drive around with a group of people, you can guarantee they're going to point her out. Yeah, she's just one of those cows. She's always clean skin. She's never dry. She's always in good condition. Yeah, it's just one of those real front paddock cows.
She may be in good condition because you look after her a bit better. Is she one of your favourites? No. So tell me, between those two bulls, Untouchable and Bam, how do they differ from each other?
Look, the U139 bull, or Lot 10, it's probably got a little bit more stretch through the front end than the 150 bull. The 150 bull is probably a bit stronger through the spine, but the 139 bull, he's got that extra stretch through the front, and then he's probably a little bit longer through that hip to pin, and just a little bit more angulation through there.
Okay, and going back to Bam, what sort of operation do you see him ideally fitting into and being successful in?
Yeah, honestly, Lot 10, as much as I said Lot 8, and maybe more so, I'd really like to see he'd go to someone that's going to retain the females. He's got so many good attributes and such a strong pedigree for breeding cows. That big, long, clean front is beautifully wedge-shaped. Yeah, I'd really like to see a line of 3 or 4-year-olds by him, no matter what colour they are.
Yeah, very good. Now, your third bull, what can you tell us about him?
Yeah, so the third bull's Lendillo Undertaker, UO68. He's catalogued Lot 48.
Lot 48, right. So a little bit about his pedigree?
Yeah, so he's Tykler Queenscliff line, which is actually Tedesco's sire, out of the Lendillo Julie PO cow.
Okay. So Tedesco seems to be, and Queenscliff running through all these bulls? Yep, very much. And what were you thinking with this breeding in particular?
The truth is, Andrew Quirk actually brought that Asta heifer, and just after purchasing the heifer, he come to us and he wanted her to come back to home and be flushed, and we had a flush program coming up, and I was already thinking about buying a Queenscliff son. I'd seen Tedesco at Sydney, and anyway, talking to Andrew, we decided to buy a couple of straws in Queenscliff and just flush one cow each, just in case I didn't end up with a bull from the sale that year. And I chose the Lendillo Julie cow. She's a hometown 10Y daughter. Actually goes back to another Tykler bull in the Tykler Kingpin G.
Tell us about the cow family of this guy and what has he produced?
Yeah, the Julie cow family, he's been great for us the last couple of years. Selling what was my favourite heifer, or Max's, I should say, my son's favourite heifer in SO24. We sold her that same year as the Asta heifer. She made $13,000 at Dubbo in 2022. And then in 2024, we had Lendillo Timber, who was out of the old L86 Julie cow. She sold to Brad Hurley. Then we had Lendillo Tornado, who was out of Q34, who's a full sister to P34, who's the mother of Undertaker. He sold down to Richard Longbottom down in the Victoria. Both sold at Dubbo last year. And then we sold 2 heifers in our on-property sale for a $6,000 average. The Julie line, I don't know, every time we get the weaners in the yard and we're drafting, it really just seems like they rise to the top of the pen whenever we're grading.
So of these 3 bulls, it seems like from listening, you're pretty passionate. You've used pretty sturdy female lines for all these bulls that you've got up at Dubbo.
Yeah, and it's very exciting to have bulls this year out of 3 of our most consistent cow lines, and then pretty similarly bred on the top side.
So of these 3 bulls, which one are you most excited about?
Definitely the last guy, I think, lot 48. He's a real complete package, and I'd say he's closest to what we're trying to produce on a consistent level. He's got great width and depth, got an excellent lower third. He's got the widest natural base in his stance and still gets his eye up over his spine.
So if you were to keep one of these bulls for yourself, which one would it be and why?
I could probably find a place for all 3 of them in our program here, to be honest. The 3 cow lines are so strong. They're breeding so well year after year. Eight I'd use if I had to bring him back. I'd use him over my bigger framed cows, the real wedgie shaped cows, tidy him up in behind that shoulder. Lot 10, he'd be a great bull to add depth of heel and that little bit of extra neck extension. And being from that great Aster cow family, he's going to add so many maternal traits. But honestly, if I had to pick one to put out with cows tomorrow, it'd be lot 48. As I said, he's the closest thing to what we're trying to breed here. So I believe with consistency is what we're really trying to aim for here at Lendillo. Breeding the bull closest to what we're aiming for is going to help with that. That's the bull I'd use.
Okay, so you've now interviewed Andrew Quirk and Tim Reed on their Dubbo teams. How do you think your team stacks up against theirs?
Yeah, I think they'll be okay. I think we're going to be quite competitive. Andrew has got a really good string of bulls this year, comprising a lot of Lendillo blood, and I really like the type he's got there. Tim's got what I think is probably his best team of bulls he's ever offered. But we're taking our bulls knowing that the breeding behind them's strong. Like I said, they're out of our good cow lines. They're similar in type as far as breeding goes. And, you know, I'm reasonably competitive. We're going to do everything we can to be competitive while we're there.
Very good. So do you have any nerves about your bulls being scrutinised by listeners now? We've heard you talk about bloodlines and breeding from these other competitors in other episodes.
Yeah, look, every time you take cows to a show or share a sale like Dubbo, you're giving the public a chance to directly compare your cattle to fellow competitors. And to be honest, I get a bit of a kick out of that. I love it. I love the competitiveness of it. But it's really also a great way to just reflect on where you're going with your program and what your program's doing, whether the bulls sell or not, or you have success with those bulls, just to see what your genetics are doing compared to bulls of the same age from different environments. It's just a real good yardstick. Obviously, we can't afford to be going to Dubbo and not selling bulls just to see where we're at, but it's just, I really find it great and just, you know, it's an honest indication of where your cattle are.
Yeah, I mean, that's showing at the end of the day, isn't it? You take your string and you offer it up for someone else's opinion and you can take it on board or not. But
yeah, look, we're going to shows most of the time. Like, obviously, we want to win a show, or, you know, we like to win. But at the end of the day, it's about showing your cattle to the public. And, you know, last few years, we've shown some pretty big strings of cattle, and as we're trying to build back up, and that's just to show, like I said, I've said it all episode, and people are probably sick of hearing the word, but the consistency, we're trying to show that we're not just breeding one good heifer, we've got 10 in the string, and that's what we're working towards the whole time.
So from a breeder's perspective, how do you see the commercial demand for Herefords evolving?
I really think it's going to be positive. You know, all the talk about sustainability and emissions, it's only going to benefit a breed like the Herefords. We're one of the easiest doing breeds with one of the best growth rates. We're the kings on grass, which we talked about in both episodes before this. When all the emission talk is from the feedlots, that in itself is exciting for us as Hereford breeders. But we also have the factor, the longevity factor of our Hereford bulls. Hereford bulls, on average, last longer. You need less bulls to breed cows because they last for more years before they break down. And the fact that there's so much benefit from crossbreeding, the great attributes that you can get from crossbreeding with hybrid vigour with a Hereford bull, it's only a matter of time before the black baldy has to reign supreme again in Australia.
Very good. So do you have any predictions on how you think Dubbo is going to go this year?
All signs are positive, to be honest. I think the lineup of bulls has as strong as I've seen for a few years. I think there's quite a few studs that are probably bringing their best bull. The season's good
It's
to the
definitely a lot.
west and to the north of Dubbo. A lot of people have put the Dubbo sale down over the last few years, and quick to ridicule when there was a couple of tough years. But 2018 and 2019, after those 2 years, there wasn't many cows to the west of Dubbo. You could drive a long way without seeing a cow. You know, those guys have had a few years to rebuild numbers. They're having a pretty good season. And to be honest, the talk's quite positive. So, well, I'm really looking forward to Dubbo this year.
You've been hearing good things from the agents as well?
Well, you can hear what the agents will tell you the same thing every year, but yeah, it's sounding positive.
That's good to hear so far. So for new listeners who might be thinking about getting into cattle or even thinking about getting into the Hereford breed, what would your advice be for them?
Yeah, jump in. Do it now. No, but honestly,
do it.
If you are thinking about moving into Herefords or you're ready to come back to Herefords, Dubbo is a great place to come and have a look or make that first contact. Actually, the Monday night before the sale, at 4 o'clock, we're having a little preview of the bulls. So 4 o'clock, all the vendors are going to get the bulls out in the ring. We're going to have a few drinks and nibblies around the ring, and yeah, the vendors will be in there with their bulls. You'll be able to come in, walk through the bulls, really put your eye over them, and use that as an opportunity to speak to the vendors.
And that's for anyone can come down and have a look. And
yep. So anyone that wants to come down, have a look. The bulls will be on display. If you like to talk genetics or cattle, even if you're not thinking about buying a bull this year, just, most of us are locked on farms and our wives are sick of hearing about Hereford genetics every night when they didn't ask. So it's a good opportunity to just get out and talk genetics and talk cattle and get with some like-minded people.
So when was that again? Sorry,
so Monday? That's Monday the 30th of June, and then the show and sale on the 1st of July.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so we're going to move on to the quick fire round now, which is something you've done in your last 2 episodes. It's something you've come up with. So the same rules are going to apply to you, Lee. So the first thing that pops into your mind as soon as I ask the question. Are you ready?
Let's go.
All right. Favorite Hereford sire from the past?
Because I wrote these questions, I actually knew this one was coming up, and now you put me on the spot. I'm still not quite sure. I want to say Kaz because he was a real favourite, but I think I'm going to go with WTK Bond as my favourite bull. I think, and again, I've said it all day, but the consistency of his breeding. So many studs in Australia used him. I love when I'm looking or researching genetics, I'll look back 6, 7, 8, 9 generations back, and the amount of times you still see Bond in there. They might be a fraction big, or they're definitely a fraction big for today's market, but they were cattle that were really structurally sound. They had really good udders. They had a heap of front in them. And it's just a really good base. A lot of people bred out of some Bond daughters. And yeah, I think he'd be my favourite.
Okay, so Bond, oldie but a goodie. So next question. Best breeding advice you ever received?
Yeah, my pop told me when I was real little with cattle. Imagine they're coming through the front door, start at the head. If you don't like the head, stop looking. And I think about that a lot still today. You don't ever really breed too much out of a weak-headed bull. Those sort of bad cows that don't have that soft eye. Normally, other cows just culling on temperament. And so, yeah, we put a lot of emphasis on the head. And I think it's steered me pretty well. So I'll say that.
Very good. Question number 3. Trait you never compromise on?
Feet, for sure. When I was in the dairy, late 2000s there, working in a dairy and seeing those real shallow-heeled cows getting lame all the time, and those cows with a bit of extra depth of heel, never seeming to get lame and coming into the dairy so much faster every day. It was already a thing of mine, but that really put the emphasis on that, and I've really been a stickler for that depth of heel and that foot structure.
Number 4, most memorable bull you've ever bred or sold?
It's probably be a bit of a shock, but I've got 2, but I'm going to say Moorfields Exceed. We're at Moorfields for 2 years. I didn't actually breed him. He was an embryo that Tony we worked for. He's a Red Angus bull. Yeah, when we were at Tony and Karen Mackey's at Moorfields, they brought an embryo, and it was born just as basically as we started, and we had him from day dot and brought him through. And back then, Reds and Blacks were showing against each other at Canberra, and it was a real strong show. And we ended up getting junior champion with him then against the Blacks, and that was a real thrill. And then we went on and won Supreme Exhibit at Sydney 2 years in a row. And we've got some Red Angus now that we've started up in Max's name, and we've got some Exceed in through those cattle. He stood the test of time and bred for them. Yeah, I'd have to say at the moment he's probably my most memorable, and it's probably because you get nostalgic with time and memories. If it wasn't so recent, I'd probably say Lendillo Soldier, and I dare say if you ask me in 10 years' time, it's going to be Soldier for sure, because we've just got our first Soldier daughters on the ground, and I'm pretty excited about a few of them.
How are they looking? How are the daughters looking?
We'll have a couple at Canberra at the youth show, actually, and I'm pretty excited.
Okay, question number 5. Biggest breeding mistake you've learned from?
Probably don't chase fads, I think, or even figures to that matter for me.
Bit controversial?
Yeah, I guess it will be very controversial, but I just don't know that new bull that's coming out that we don't know that much about, or looking back at the 90s, and I only had a few cows then, and my uncle had a bit of a stud, but gee, we bred them big and raw and got way too far away from what we wanted to do, and that was people just wanting to get that new bull and getting it in and chasing the next one, and chase your 2 generations or 3 generations in of using bulls that we don't know that much about before you realize what damage you've done and what traits you've lost. You start chasing one trait. How many traits are we really losing? Like, I'm even worried with, we're testing for all these genetic markers, and I don't know. I know he's an MD carrier, but gee, he did a lot of good. I worry that we get too far into that. We're going to lose too many traditional traits. I'd have to say for me, my biggest mistake was doing that back in the day. I was so excited to get 2 straws of the new U-Butte bull that was out. From now, I'll say that word again, but it's about consistency for me and predictability. I guess we probably wait until someone's used a bull, and then we'll go and buy the best son we can find out of one of a stud's best cow, and that's sort of our breeding philosophy a bit.
I guess that sort of reflects a bit in Tedesco. You liked Queenscliff, and then you went and bought a son in him.
Yeah, and that's the whole way through. We were convinced we were going to buy a techno. We loved the technos, but instead of using techno himself, we sort of waited and seen who bred the good ones and where they were, and then we ended up buying one from Grafflin. We brought Pacemaker as a techno out of their best cow, and we did the same thing with Tedesco. Yeah.
Very good. So question number 6, one mating you'd love to do again, and why?
Yeah, I think about it more than I should, to be honest. I said before about Kaz, I don't have any semen in him, and I've looked around and haven't been able to chase any, but I brought a heifer, and it was back in the LJS dispersal. I don't know if that was 98 or something like that. It was a Kaz Duchess, and she was so far, like, she would have been great today. She was so thick, so carcassy. I showed her because I only had a few cows and I was just coming into the breed, and I just got buried everywhere I went because she was so butch, but she was so thick and had so much carcass about her. And then Llandillo's got that Duchess line here. I just think if you get a bull like Kaz, he had such a big, soft head on him, and he was probably a little bit yellow, but the females are good, and yeah, I'd love to have a crack at that again. It's not out of the question yet. I'll find a Kaz straw somewhere someday. If you got one out there, you want to sell it, get in contact.
So the question 6 with that, it wasn't me. I didn't make it on the top of that list.
No, look, I probably could do that again. Let's keep this PG.
All right, last question, number 7. Your prediction for the top price bull at Dubbo?
Yeah, looking through, and I think I said before, but it looks like quite a few studs have got their best bull they've had for a few years. A lot of the talk is that the Remington bull by the ranch, Sharpshooter, is a hell of a bull. I've seen a Remington bull at Wodonga that the Tarlingtons had that I absolutely loved, and Cloverlee had a heifer down there and it was good too. So that bull's obviously breeding. So I think that bull's going to be quite interesting and have a fair bit of hype. And then Paul Wood from Valley View, his bull looks really impressive. He's topped the sale the 2 years in a row now. So between the ranch and him, that's the top price for the last 3 or 4 years. But yeah, there could be a few smokies in there, but I think they're the 2 bulls I'd probably have a bet on if I was a betting man.
Well, it's been fascinating hearing from you. It's definitely one thing when you're talking and interviewing people, but to hear your own point of view and your own philosophies on breeding and things like that, it's definitely another thing. I think your passion for the industry is really coming through. Your Lendillo Dubbo bulls are lot numbers 8, 10 and 48. Where can people find more information about these bulls?
Yeah, so we're pretty active on Facebook. Lendillo Facebook page, have a look on there. Most of the things you need to know. I'll put a link to the Facebook page and my phone number in the show notes, actually. If you type in Lendillo or Lendillo Dubbo 2025, the three videos will be on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, this will actually also be on YouTube, and it'll have the photos of the size, the dams, pedigrees, and videos all attached. So you can have a look at it there.
Well, that sounds very good. Now, before I hand back my hosting duties, what can listeners expect for next episode?
Yeah, so the plan for the next episode is we're going to do a wrap up of Dubbo. So I'll get Andrew and Tim back in, and my goal is to chase up someone that's maybe there that's not there as a vendor and just there for the day watching the show on sale. So I haven't got that person worked out yet, but we'll make a few calls and reach out and see who we can chase up. But we're going to sit down, go through the bulls, talk about the judging, talk about the sale, a bit of what the vendors were talking about, what the buyers were talking about, and go through the top price bull and averages and things like that.
So for bulltail listeners, that's now 3 different approaches to Hereford breeding, all heading to Dubbo on the 1st of July. We have Andrew Quirk from Pinnacle Pole Herefords from episode 1. We've got Tim Reed from JTR Cattle Co. in episode 2. And we've now got Lee White from Llandillo Pole Herefords in episode 3. Alrighty, Lee. Well, thanks for letting me turn the tables and be your guest host and interviewing you. I think the listeners really got a bit out of getting to know the man behind the microphone. So I'd like to wish you, or us, good luck in Dubbo, and hope everyone has a really good sale.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. I know I probably forced you into doing this a little bit. You pretty hard. But, no, I do appreciate you doing it. It's been fun. And I promise I won't force you to do this too often.
I'm Claire White, and this has been Bull Tales. Lee White will be back next week, and he'll be doing a complete Dubbo wrap-up. So don't forget to subscribe and leave a review for us. It really helps our show. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.